want to get without preconceiving or setting a result.
Every single day, I bring you another wild story from Hollywood's golden age, the moments that defined an era nobody can forget. If you want to keep these memories alive with me, hit that subscribe button. It's totally free, but it means the world. Thanks for being here. Now let's get into it. We're talking about the top 4 actors Robert Duvall just couldn't stand. And trust me, this list hits hard. For over 6 decades, Duvall built a rock-solid reputation as one of Hollywood's most respected legends. He was that sharp-minded, no-nonsense performer who could steal a scene with a single glare. But behind that calm, stone-faced look, Duvall was holding on to some seriously strong feelings, ones he kept locked away for years. Now, in a shocking twist that's got Hollywood buzzing, the 94-year-old Oscar winner finally let it all out in a jaw-dropping interview that no one saw coming. Duvall cracked open his vault of secrets and revealed the 4 actors he absolutely couldn't work with during his legendary career. These weren't just little arguments or creative differences. These were real clashes that shook movie sets, changed performances, and even left their mark on film history. People always thought they knew the man behind the calm stare, but they had no clue. "I've held my tongue for decades," Duvall reportedly said. "But at 94, what exactly am I waiting for? It's time for the truth." The craziest part, it's not just about who he named. It's that he's the one finally naming them. Duvall was known as the ultimate professional, the actor who never threw shade at anyone. But now the gloves are off, and Hollywood can't believe what he just revealed. Robert Duvall was always that quiet powerhouse. The man who minded his business, showed up, and delivered every single time. For someone that private to finally break his silence, the conflict must have cut deep, something strong enough to still bother him well into his 90s. Get ready, because this is the raw, unfiltered truth behind some of Hollywood's most iconic pairings, the ones fans worshipped without ever realizing the chaos bubbling right under the surface. These weren't just small creative clashes. These were full-blown feuds that stayed hidden in plain sight while millions watched their favorite movies, totally clueless. The chemistry on screen might have looked flawless, but off camera, things were ice cold. So, what finally made Duvall speak up after all these years? Before dropping those 4 shocking names that had Hollywood spinning, Duvall explained why he decided to break the personal code he'd kept his whole life. According to people close to him, it wasn't sparked by one single argument or dramatic outburst. No, it came from something much deeper. Sources say Duvall started taking a hard look at his legacy, realizing that history might have gotten parts of his story completely wrong. Robert reached a point where he felt the historical record needed correcting, said a longtime associate who preferred to stay unnamed. Duvall had apparently sat through too many documentaries filled with fake smiles and staged friendships, where the truth was conveniently edited out. The final straw reportedly came during a recent tribute to his career, a grand celebration packed with glowing montages and sentimental moments. As Duvall watched clip after clip of himself alongside actors, he secretly couldn't stand while the narration hyped up deep friendships and wonderful collaborations. Something inside him finally snapped. "I sat there listening to all this revisionist nonsense about mutual respect and creative partnerships," Duvall told his interviewer, clearly fed up with the sugar-coated Hollywood fairy tales.
He got a job working in a nut house, dressed in white, and he would come home from the asylum every night, and he had a girlfriend named Rusty, Dusty and Rusty. They both dressed in white, and she was this much taller than he.
Meanwhile, I'm thinking about how one of these people once deliberately stepped on my lines just to ruin takes, and another straight up tried to get me fired from what became one of my signature roles. You can almost feel the decades of frustration boiling over in that moment. At 94, with an Academy Award proudly sitting on his shelf, a stack of nominations, and a legacy carved in stone, Duvall finally realized he didn't owe Hollywood's shiny illusions a thing. He wasn't here to protect false images or play nice anymore. He was ready to tell it like it really was. More than anything, he wanted to pass down some truth to the next generation of actors, a reality check straight from someone who's seen it all. "These kids deserve to know that even the greatest films sometimes come from difficult situations," he explained passionately. Sometimes excellent performances happen not because of great relationships, but despite terrible ones. That honesty hit hard. No filters, no PR spin. Just raw experience from a man who built his name on integrity and grit. With that no-nonsense explanation out of the way, Duvall finally did it. He dropped the names, and the moment those words left his mouth, the entire industry went silent. This wasn't gossip. This was a Hollywood earthquake. The first name he revealed shocked everyone, even the most seasoned insiders who thought they'd heard it all. Number 1, Marlon Brando. The most destructive ego I ever encountered, Duvall declared without hesitation. The first actor in his bombshell reveal wasn't some minor star or forgotten face. It was a legend. Marlon Brando, widely hailed as one of the greatest actors to ever stand in front of a camera, was in Duvall's eyes a genius, but a genius with a dangerously uncontrollable ego. No question, Duvall admitted sharply. He was also the most destructive ego I ever encountered in this business. He wasn't exaggerating. Marlon Brando was a man who could wreck an entire production just to prove a point. Behind the camera, he was a total nightmare, unpredictable and ruthless when things didn't go his way. Their most infamous clash went down during the chaotic 1966 film The Chase, a movie mostly forgotten today, but packed with big names like Brando, Duvall, Jane Fonda, and Robert Redford. What audiences never saw was the psychological war raging behind the scenes, a brutal mind game that would forever change how Duvall approached acting. According to multiple reports, Brando had a bad habit of playing with his own performance from take to take, twisting scenes until editors were pulling their hair out. If he didn't like how a director handled a moment, he'd deliberately mess with other actors' shots. Pure sabotage hidden under the excuse of artistic freedom. Brando called it protecting his performance. Duvall called it straight-up professional sabotage. The tension exploded during one of Duvall's biggest moments in the movie, a powerful monologue meant to cement his rising status in Hollywood. But Brando wasn't about to make it easy. Sources confirm that Brando started making tiny off-camera noises, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Ruining take. After the 5th ruined take, I confronted him, Duvall recalled. He just smiled and said, "Maybe you should be stronger in your choices." That line right there. Classic Brando. Subtle manipulation dressed up as wisdom. He'd wreck your moment, then make you look like the problem. What makes it even crazier is how this flips the entire public story about their relationship. For years, people believed they shared mutual respect, but behind closed doors, it was war. For decades, Duvall publicly praised Marlon Brando as one of his greatest influences. But behind closed doors, he was quietly seething. The tension never fully faded, even as they kept crossing paths on other sets. By the time The Godfather rolled around, they still hadn't settled the score. And interestingly, they never actually shared a single scene. That scheduling choice suddenly feels a whole lot less like coincidence and a whole lot more like strategy. I learned more from watching Marlon than anyone else, Duvall admitted. But it wasn't just about acting technique. I learned how not to treat colleagues. Genius doesn't excuse cruelty. That one line says it all. His respect for Brando's talent never erased his disgust for the man's behavior, a mix of admiration and resentment that explains why Duvall stayed quiet for so long. But just when everyone thought the bombshells were done, Duvall wasn't finished yet, his second name hit Hollywood even harder. Number 2, James Caan, competitive to the point of malice. This one shocked insiders because Caan wasn't just any co-star. He was family on screen. The two men played Sonny Corleone and Tom Hagen, creating one of the most iconic brotherly bonds in movie history. Jimmy and I created one of the most believable brother relationships ever, Duvall said, and we barely spoke off camera. That revelation alone had people stunned. According to reports, the friction between them started early, right in the middle of rehearsals for The Godfather. Both men were fighting to stand out in a powerhouse cast, but their methods couldn't have been more different. Duvall came in calm, prepared, and laser-focused. Caan, on the other hand, allegedly turned every scene into a personal competition, cutting in, interrupting, and trying to outshine everyone around him. Jimmy was competitive to the point of malice, Duvall confessed. A statement that shattered the myth of their brotherly bond and showed that behind the camera, their dynamic was anything but friendly.
If they offer somebody 5 times what they offer me, that's totally unacceptable. If they offered them 2 to 3 times more, which they didn't, that would be acceptable but not ideal, but I would accept it. But they didn't do that. If they offer 5 times, then that's unacceptable, and that's what happened. So it did boil down to economics.
Duvall revealed that James Caan wasn't just competitive, he was relentless. He deliberately tried to upstage everyone, especially me, Duvall admitted. If I had a big moment in a scene, he'd suddenly throw in wild hand gestures or exaggerated expressions, anything to pull focus. The quiet tension between them eventually boiled over during one of The Godfather's most unforgettable moments, the iconic family meeting scene where the Corleones debate going to war with the Tartaglia family. Duvall was calmly talking through his character's motivations with director Francis Ford Coppola when, out of nowhere, Caan reportedly cut in with a smirk and a dismissive jab about Duvall overthinking glorified secretary roles. That single comment changed everything. In that instant, Duvall decided there would never be a friendship between them, not on or off the set. I also decided Tom Hagen would always be keeping a careful eye on Sonny in our scenes together, Duvall recalled, which actually helped the performance, because that's exactly how a consigliere would handle a hothead like Sonny. It's wild to think that real-life tension ended up making one of cinema's greatest relationships even more believable. What makes this even more shocking is how perfectly they managed to hide it. For decades, through press tours, reunion events, and anniversary interviews, the two men played their parts like total pros. On camera, they laughed, joked, and acted like lifelong friends, but underneath all that charm was years of buried friction. When we were promoting the film, we both knew what was at stake, Duvall explained. We weren't going to let personal issues ruin something that important, so we smiled, told the right stories, and played our parts. That kind of discipline says everything about Duvall's character. He may have had his issues behind the scenes, but when it came to protecting the film's legacy, he always put the work first, no matter how much resentment he had to swallow. While Duvall's clashes with Brando and Caan were mostly professional, built on ego and power struggles, his third revelation cut far deeper. Number 3, Dustin Hoffman, the credit thief. This one stunned fans everywhere, especially since both men started from nearly the same place. Hungry young actors, hustling through New York's tough theater scene, just trying to survive and make a name for themselves. We were friends, or so I thought, Duvall recalled, his words carrying decades of disappointment. But according to him, friendship meant something completely different to Hoffman. Their tension didn't start on a film set. It started way back in the early 1960s, when the two shared a cramped apartment while auditioning for stage roles. What began as friendly competition soon took a dark turn. Hoffman allegedly started borrowing Duvall's techniques, the very methods he'd spent weeks perfecting for auditions. I'd spend weeks on a particular interpretation, Duvall said, practice it in our apartment, and then Dustin would get called for the same part and use my approach, sometimes word for word. He'd say, "You inspired me." That's a fancy way of saying theft. That's a heavy accusation, and it paints a totally different picture of their so-called friendship. Reports claim this pattern didn't stop once they hit Hollywood. It only grew worse. During the late 1960s, when Duvall took on True Grit, 1969, as the outlaw Ned Pepper, Hoffman was allegedly still reaching out, calling Duvall for help with character development and voice techniques for his own roles. Around that same time, Duvall even helped Hoffman shape the unforgettable voice of Ratso Rizzo in Midnight Cowboy. But when the spotlight hit and Hoffman started doing interviews, he claimed he'd developed the character completely on his own, never mentioning Duvall's name, not once. That betrayal stung deep. The final straw came a couple of years later when both men were being considered for the lead role in The French Connection, 1971. That iconic part eventually went to Gene Hackman, but by then, Duvall's friendship with Hoffman was already beyond repair. He realized some people don't just compete, They quietly take credit for your work while smiling in your face. According to insiders, Dustin Hoffman didn't just compete with Duvall, he allegedly went behind his back. Sources claim Hoffman told director William Friedkin that Duvall was difficult and uncooperative, a sneaky move that Duvall believes cost him the career-defining role in The French Connection. That single act crossed the line, turning a professional rivalry into what Duvall called deliberate sabotage. I confronted him years later, Duvall revealed, and he denied it. But I had it confirmed by Friedkin himself. That betrayal hit deep. It wasn't just about a role. It was about loyalty. Despite the bad blood, Duvall never aired it publicly. For decades, he kept things polite, attending the same Hollywood events, shaking hands, and even speaking respectfully about Hoffman's work. That level of restraint fooled everyone, which is exactly why this revelation hit the industry like a bomb. No one imagined that two of the greatest actors of their generation had been carrying that kind of hidden resentment for half a century. And just when Hollywood was still reeling from Duvall's confession about Hoffman, he dropped his final name, and it sent shockwaves across the entire entertainment world. Number 4, Robert Redford, the fraud behind the golden image. This last name was the most explosive of all. Redford wasn't just a movie star, he was Hollywood royalty. For decades, he carried a spotless reputation, the golden boy, the thoughtful artist, the environmental activist, and the respected champion of independent film. But according to Duvall, that perfect image was just that, an image. Redford crafted the perfect public persona, Duvall stated. The thoughtful artist, the environmentalist, the champion of independent film. The reality I experienced was something else entirely. A calculating opportunist who treated crew members like furniture and fellow actors like obstacles. That statement alone flipped the industry's perception of Redford upside down. Their clash reportedly began during the filming of The Natural, 1984, where Duvall played sports columnist Max Mercy opposite Redford's aging baseball legend Roy Hobbs. What looked like a smooth, nostalgic sports drama on screen was apparently a tense battleground behind the scenes, with Redford guarding his spotlight at all costs. What should have been a smooth, respectful working relationship between two Hollywood legends quickly went off the rails. Duvall recalled that Robert Redford would keep the entire crew waiting for hours, not because he was deep in character or lost in artistic preparation, but because he was busy taking phone calls and handling business deals. Meanwhile, everyone else stood around collecting their pay while valuable shooting time slipped away. That's not artistry, Duvall said sharply. That's arrogance. The frustration on set grew fast, and soon the tension was impossible to ignore. Things hit a boiling point during the key confrontation scenes between their characters. According to Duvall, Redford began pressuring director Barry Levinson to cut down Duvall's role, arguing that some of Max Mercy's scenes were unnecessary. But Duvall saw what was really happening. The scenes Redford wanted gone were the ones where Mercy challenged Hobbs's carefully constructed heroic image. It became clear to me that any strong presence opposite Redford was seen as a threat, Duvall explained. This wasn't about serving the story. It was about making sure he dominated every frame. The irony wasn't lost on him either. Redford was literally playing a character trying to protect his reputation from being exposed, while off camera, he was doing everything possible to control how he looked on screen. What really got under Duvall's skin was the gap between Redford's public persona and his real behavior.
He lived downtown.
Okay.
Dustin Hoffman, we lived uptown with Maurice Stern, who was a cantor, and both my brothers were singers. So we had a place uptown with Dustin Hoffman. What a character.
To the world, Redford was the golden ideal, the artist of integrity, the champion of collaboration, the visionary founder of the Sundance Institute who preached creativity and fairness. But on set, according to Duvall, that spirit of collaboration vanished fast. He demanded final cut privileges and even tried to influence how other actors played their roles, Duvall revealed. The contrast between Redford's public image and his behind-the-scenes behavior was jaw-dropping. And for Duvall, it shattered the illusion of the Hollywood hero everyone thought they knew. Duvall said the most damning moment didn't even happen on set. It came after filming during post-production. That's when he finally confronted Robert Redford about his behavior, and what happened next left a mark that never faded. Witnesses claim Redford brushed him off with a line that still stings decades later. "You're a character actor, Bob. I'm a movie star. We're not playing by the same rules." That single sentence said it all. "I never looked at him the same way again," Duvall admitted. It was the moment everything crystallized. The arrogance, the entitlement, the huge gap between how Redford acted in public and how he really treated people behind the scenes. And this revelation, it's easily the most explosive of them all. Coming from one of Hollywood's most respected veterans about another living legend, it completely shatters decades of glossy press and red carpet perfection. Duvall's honesty didn't just hit Redford, it hit the entire industry, forcing people to question just how much of Hollywood's good guy image is real and how much is carefully manufactured. The fallout was immediate. Within days of Duvall's jaw-dropping interview, Hollywood was in full meltdown, a storm of shock, denial, and uneasy reflection. Representatives for both Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, the only living actors named, rushed to issue cautious, lawyer-approved statements. Each expressed surprise at Duvall's claims while politely emphasizing respect for his contributions to cinema. But behind the polished PR talk, insiders were whispering, and what they said only made things hotter. Industry veterans quietly started backing Duvall's version of events. Multiple crew members from The Natural reportedly confirmed similar stories about Redford's behavior on set. Long waits, power plays, and total control of production decisions. Even a former assistant director from The Godfather stepped forward, saying the tension between Duvall and James Caan during filming was very real, not just a rumor or exaggeration. It seems that for the first time, Hollywood's hidden truths were finally spilling out, and the mask of perfection that once defined its biggest stars was cracking wide open. Even Francis Ford Coppola, while refusing to dive into the personal drama, acknowledged something powerful, that the chemistry audiences fall in love with on screen often comes from very complicated personal dynamics behind the camera. That simple statement said more than 1,000 denials ever could. But what's truly stunning is what's been happening quietly in the background since Duvall's revelations. According to insiders, several big-name actors, one still active in the business, have privately reached out to thank Duvall for finally saying out loud what so many in Hollywood have felt for years but never dared to express. It's as if he opened a door everyone had been too scared to touch. And through it all, Duvall himself hasn't shown a hint of regret. If anything, he seems lighter, unburdened after decades of silence. In a short follow-up statement, the 94-year-old legend made it clear this wasn't about revenge or trying to destroy anyone's legacy. It was about truth. "I've given 60 years to this industry and treated it with respect," his statement read. Part of that respect means being honest about its realities, both good and bad. He didn't sugarcoat it. These weren't minor disagreements or fleeting conflicts, he continued. These were sustained behaviors that shaped productions and affected careers. Realities that deserve to be recorded, not glossed over in the polished version everyone agrees to call the truth. Those words hit hard, especially in a town built on illusion. Duvall's courage to name names forced Hollywood to look in the mirror, and for many, it's not a pretty reflection. Now, as the industry continues to reel from these bombshells, one question refuses to fade. Is he done? After 6 decades of discipline and silence, does Robert Duvall still have more truth bombs waiting to drop? His cryptic closing remark hinted that while these 4 stood out, they definitely weren't the only ones. Hollywood, he seemed to suggest, has always been far better at creating myths than acknowledging realities. And for the first time, those myths are starting to crack. All because one legend finally decided to stop playing the game and start telling the truth. Maybe it is time for more truth. The real story hiding behind all that glitter and glamour. What do Robert Duvall's explosive revelations really say about Hollywood as a whole? It goes far beyond just 4 broken relationships. This is about the entire system that's been built to keep the truth buried under red carpets and studio smiles. For decades, publicists, studios, and even the actors themselves have worked overtime to protect those polished images. They spin the drama, calling brutal fights creative differences and straight-up bad behavior artistic temperament. But Duvall's blunt honesty blows those safe little euphemisms to pieces. He's exposing what Hollywood has always tried to hide, the personal grudges, rivalries, and emotional warfare that often power its most iconic performances. And maybe that's the real revelation here. His confessions don't just pull the mask off a few big names, they challenge the myth of what artistic collaboration really looks like. The magic we see on screen, the chemistry between Tom Hagen and Sonny Corleone, the tension between Max Mercy and Roy Hobbs, didn't always come from harmony or deep friendship. Sometimes, as Duvall makes crystal clear, those unforgettable moments were born from genuine conflict and silent resentment. It's a raw truth Hollywood rarely admits. Greatness doesn't always come from peace. Sometimes it comes from pressure. As legendary director Sidney Lumet once put it, great art doesn't always come from great relationships. And Duvall's long, storied career proves that point again and again. In the end, his words remind us that behind every perfect scene and award-winning smile, there's a whole world of chaos, ego, and emotion, and maybe, that's where the real Hollywood magic begins. Robert Duvall's ability to deliver raw, authentic performances, even opposite actors he personally couldn't stand, proves a level of professionalism that goes beyond ego. For him, the work always came first. The art mattered more than the feelings, and that's a powerful lesson for every young actor stepping into the chaos of Hollywood. Duvall's brutal honesty offers both a warning and a dose of wisdom. The warning that Hollywood's so-called collaboration often hides a fierce battlefield of ambition and control. Beneath the charm and glamour lies a cutthroat world where not everyone plays fair. But the wisdom, it's just as valuable. Personal feelings don't have to define professional greatness. You can still create unforgettable work, even when the atmosphere off camera is tense and uncomfortable. As Duvall enters what are likely the final chapters of his legendary career, his choice to finally speak out feels less like revenge and more like reflection. A man setting the record straight before the curtain closes. He's not trying to burn bridges. He's making sure history remembers the truth, not the polished PR fantasy. In doing this, Duvall may have delivered his most honest performance yet, playing himself, the truth-teller in an industry built on beautiful illusions. His revelations remind us that the brightest lights often cast the darkest shadows, and sometimes, telling the truth is the most powerful act of all. If you found this deep dive into Hollywood's hidden conflicts as fascinating as we did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves the real side of showbiz. Drop your thoughts down in the comments.